Welcome CSE 121 to ex26, and this is color labels with TKinter. We're going to use a Python module called TKinter, which is used for making GUIs or graphical user interfaces, similar to what we did with the turtle module. And if we're in Replit, you'll notice that we have a different kind of interface that we're working in. We have two windows. We have a GUI window here and we have our code window here. You're going to use this bottom part for kind of catching errors and things like that. And our interface we're going to see here. Now it's kind of primitive. Now you can see from the code here, it's very much like HTML. I guess that's what I could compare it. If you've worked with HTML, it's going to kind of be like that. So I'll just show you a sample here. And another thing I want to point out too is we're not going to do this in the Replit classroom. We'll just do it as a regular Replit activity, and you could just send me the link and I'll give you a link to start, only because I'd have to make a whole new classroom in Replit for the TKinter module instead of using the Python one. So I'd rather just get this done quicker. So anyway, here's the sample. I'm going to run this, and here's what's coming up here, and it looks very small, and you can make it bigger by reducing the size of this, and we can control some of the size of this. So again, it's not very complicated, and what's going to happen here is we have three labels. There's a red label, a green label, and a blue label, and they have a red background, a green background, and a blue background, regular RGB colors, and there's white text on all three, and they say red, green, and blue. And then we have three buttons, kind of like HTML buttons that you'd see in a form. And I just made these bold for now, and they just stack on top of each other. And even the way we lay them out is similar to what we do with CSS, sometimes with floats. But all we're going to do here is we're going to throw some Python functions on these buttons that can actually control the labels. And it's just an introduction. So again, it's nothing very complex here, but you're going to click on the first button, and you can see what happened. It changed the red label to dark red, and big surprise, this one's going to change the green label to dark green, and this one's going to change the blue label to dark blue. That's all. Just doing it real simple just to get an intro to TKinter. There's a lot of neat stuff we can do with it. I don't know how much time we'll have, but for this one, we're just going to do that. And then there's a fourth button that you're going to do, and when I do it in the video, I'm not going to show you how to do this one because you should be able to figure that out from doing the other one, so I'll let that open as kind of a challenge. But what this button is going to do, it's going to reset them to their original state. These will change the colors, and then this will reset them back. So that's what we're going to do in this, and we're going to do it as a TKinter module. You can see here we have to import it in there, and we could use Python code, and there's a whole library of TKinter code that we have to use. And it's kind of like the turtle module, so there's a whole set of code that you can use just with the TKinter module, and you could research any of that. There's a lot of resources out there for TKinter. I don't know how often you'll really use it, but I think it's kind of neat to introduce with Python. And then one other thing, because I'm not going to go into it in really depth, if you want to watch this video, I have a link for it and documents and resources, and you might look at this and see this guy and think he looks like he's, like 16 years old, but it's actually a pretty good video. So if you want to check out a little, it's 40 minutes, you don't want to watch the whole video, but if you want to check this out, put it at a higher speed, and get a little intro for TKinter, that would be helpful too. So what I'm going to do now is start this from scratch with a brand new repel. And I'll just click here. And you do have to choose TKinter, and it is new. We used it last spring. It was kind of new, so it's gotten a little better. They do updates with it. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to give it a name of ex26, and I'll just call it CL for color labels, and I'll put TKinter, and I'll put a V since I'm recording a video, and I'll create my repel. And you'll notice it will say Python 3.6, not 3.8 like our normal Python, and it'll have two windows over here. We don't need anything over here, so we could close this up. And again, you can resize some of this stuff when you need to make it bigger. So what we're going to do first is we're going to import our TKinter module, and we could just say from TKinter import all, and we could do it like this, and we could start off like that. That way, when we don't have to put any kind of name in front of it to precede it, like with turtles and things like that. So we're going to start with that, and what we're going to do is we're going to, just like with the turtles, we have to make a master of the class, kind of like an instance of the class, and we'll just call it M. Sometimes they use master. We're just going to say M because it's shorter. So we're going to say M equals, and then we'll just say TK. Now, it's a capital T, just like when we use turtle, we use a capital T with turtle. We use a capital T and then a small k, and then open and closing parentheses, just like that. So that defines kind of the master instance of the class that we're working in. So we're just going to start off with that. And then at the end, we're going to do something called M dot main loop, and we're going to need that to actually run it, and that's going to be after everything. That's almost like a run kind of command that's going to happen. So that's going to be at the end. So we're going to have all our code in between these two things right now until we make some functions. So what we're going to do first is we're going to make some labels, and I'm going to use kind of abbreviations like I used to use with ActionScript back with Flash, and I'll just call it like lab1, and I'll make one called lab2, and I'll make one called lab3, and they're going to be of the label type. So we're going to do something called a label, and it's going to look like that, and it's going to have parentheses. So we could do these all like that. Now what we're going to do first in here is we're going to put the root or the master. So we're going to put M because these labels are based on this. So just like it's a turtle kind of thing, this will be based on M. So we're going to say M, comma, and here we'll say M, comma, and here we'll say M, comma. Now what we're going to do next is give our labels some properties. Now you might not be familiar with these properties, but what we're going to do first is we can give it a text property, we could give it a BG property, we could give it an FG for foreground. So we'll start off with this. I'll give it a text, and I'll say text equals, and in quotes, I'll just call the first one red, and then I'll copy all this, so I'll keep going with this one right now. And then what I'll also do is give it a background color, so that's going to be BG equals, and I'm going to use hex, even though you can just type in red like that. I'm going to use hex right now because when we change it to make it darker, it'll be easier using hex. So in the quotes, like a string, I'm going to put the pound sign, and you should know that it's FF0000. Make sure you don't use O's there. So that's the background color, and then to make the text color, we're going to use a foreground color. I think by default it's black, so we're going to change that. We're going to say FG, and we're going to say equals, and then in quotes, we'll just make it white. We don't have to put hex here, although you can. If you want to be consistent and do the pound sign and do all F's, that would be white. I'm not sure if it uses the abbreviation of just the 3 F's, so I'll just leave it with all 6. And then what I can do is just copy this stuff, and I'll make this one, I'll do like RGB, I'll make one green, and I'll make this one blue. And then these colors will just change, because when it's green, the middle colors are F. So it's going to be 00, FF, 00, and for the blue, the F's are going to be at the end. So it'll be 0000, FF. So those are my labels. Now before I do anything, now I could run this and see what happens. Nothing happens yet. I just see kind of a background, so it's working, and I see a little time thing happening. So I have this little TK window here. Now nothing's happening. Look how tiny it is. Nothing's happening in it yet, but what I will do is I have to pack these things. They have in order to make these print. Now you can actually put a window name in here. I didn't do that yet, but you can put like a title in here. I think you could do something like m.title and put parentheses and I'll call it color labels. See if that changes anything over here. And there it says color labels. That's odd. I didn't see this window when I did it the first time because I did a little practice thing, unless I messed something up. But anyway, you can see how tiny this is, so we're going to have to fix that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pack these labels, and that just kind of means print them. So I'll even put some comments here. I'll just put pound sign labels, and then I'll put a pound sign pack. And that just means we're kind of printing them out. And there's different ways to do that, but we'll use the pack method right now. And I'm just going to say lab1.pack. Actually, I'll do just one and see what happens. I'll hit stop. And there it is. It's super tiny. So we can adjust the size of the font in here too, which we'll probably do because it's really tiny right now. And you can see that little window. And if you were doing this in VS Code, it would actually make a window that size as well. So that's kind of like a little, like almost like a pop-up window. I think you can resize this a little bit, but it's not going to do anything right now. Let's see if we can resize this. The window's not going to make that any bigger. See, that's what the window like. That's what's really happening right now. And we're going to make that a little bit bigger. So what I'll do next is, first of all, I'll copy these. And make sure when you're copying and pasting all this stuff that you remember to update them. There we have lab 1, label 1, lab 2, lab 3. This is the labels here. So now they're all packed. So if I stop and run this again, there's my window. If I make it a little bit bigger, you can see they're just kind of stacked on each other. And I can move this down too. That should make it a little bit bigger. Now, we're going to make these a little bit bigger too, so we're going to put a font size in there. So what we can do is we can go over here. Now, we could eventually put line breaks in here like after a comma. So I'll do that afterwards, but right now I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to put another comma and I'm going to put font equals and then in parentheses. So you need another set of parentheses in here, and you have to put the font and then the size and then the style, and there might be some other things, but I'm just going to do the font, the size and the style. Now, even if you're not choosing a font, you have to put none. So I'm going to, in quotes, I'm going to put none because it does require you put a font property. So even if you didn't pick a font, now you could choose any basic font, but I'm going to put a comma, I'm going to put a size, and I'll put like maybe 30 right now. I think that's what I used on the other one to make it a little bigger. So I'm going to put 30, and I'm not going to put any style. I'm not going to make it bold or anything. Although I could go here and in quotes put bold. Maybe that'll look a little better. And I'll start off with that, and I'll stop and I'll run it. And you can see it's now bigger, bolder, so that looks pretty good. So we'll see what happens with that. So I'll just copy this part, and remember there is an extra set of parentheses for the font. It's kind of like what we did with the turtle when you had to write stuff, if you use the turtle stuff, when we did a stop sign. So I'm going to paste this in here, and they're all going to be the same. And I'll stop it and just run it and see what it looks like. And again, since it's running in here, it's not the fastest. Invalid syntax. I must have screwed something up here. And I forgot my commas here. So if you have something that's not working, always check this down here for errors. And it didn't really tell me what it is, but I could see that if it's syntax, I could see I didn't have commas there. So I'll try it again. And if you get any issue like this where it's not doing anything, just do a refresh. Okay, and this is what it looks like right now. And I had a little glitch. It would not produce the screen, and I've had that happen in the past. It seems a little glitchy. What I had to do, I tried refreshing, that didn't work. I forked this and gave it a new name, and that suddenly brought it back. So that seems to be the only fix when you have it where this doesn't display and you get this message down here, which isn't really an error. So this should display, but if you have problems and something won't display, try just forking it and give it a new name. It just seems like it has some issues occasionally. So anyway, this is what this looks like right now. And one thing we're going to try to do is not stack them. We're going to put them side by side. We could even give these widths on here so they have a consistent width. And what I'll do is I'll go somewhere in here. I'll do it right after here. And maybe I'll put a line break in here. I'll go after this comma where the color is, and I'll just do a shift return. And I'll go here and do a shift return, like a line break. And then what I'll do right here is I'll just do a space, and I'll put width equals, and I think we can just do 8, and then I'll put a comma. And let me just backspace to make sure this looks okay. And that looks okay. So I'll copy this whole thing in here, copy it right over this. And I'll copy it right over this. And then I'm going to put a line break in here. So if you leave them on one whole line, that's okay too. But let's just make sure this works after doing that. And it appears to still work. And there it is. So now they're all the same width because I put that 8. It makes it 8 characters, which is actually what it is. So I'm going to stretch this out, move this down a little so it's not so tiny. And there's our window. So you can see what's happening. It's stacking. It's kind of like in HTML when block elements stack. And what we're going to try to do is put them side by side, which is kind of like floats in HTML. And we could do that right here in the pack. I'm just going to put something called side equals, and you don't use quotes. You're just going to say left. And it's almost like when you float left. So I'm going to do side equals left. You have to put left in all caps. And I'll just copy this. And I'll stop this, and I'll run it again. And there it is, and that's what it should look like so far. So that's the first part of this. What we're going to do is we're going to put some buttons on here, and then we're going to control the buttons and make these change color. So I think what I'll do is I'll take a break here. Since I was having some glitchy kind of things, I'm going to take a break here. And just to review, we had to import the TKinter module. We had to make a master instance here called M, and then we're using M to make a title, which is that thing up there. And then we're making these labels part of the label type, and we're going to use a button type next, and they're also going to be part of M. And then we're even going to use something called frames to kind of stack these on top of each other so we can put these buttons right below here. So we're going to do that in part 2.